opportunity, but money doesn't move because of any of those things. Money responds to law, just like gravity doesn't care how sincere you are. Financial laws don't care how hard you try. If you violate them, the result is predictable. If you align with them, the outcome is just as predictable, but in your favor. This is where many people get frustrated. They say, I work hard, but nothing is changing. Hard work is honorable, but hard work without alignment is exhausting. You can paddle all day against the current and still end up nowhere. Alignment with law allows the current to carry you forward with far less resistance. Wealth is not random. It is not a mystery reserved for a lucky few. It follows order. The same way seeds produce harvests only when planted in the right soil, money multiplies only when placed within the right principles. When people say money is unfair, what they are often saying is that they don't understand the rules of the game they're playing. One of the most important laws of wealth is that money moves toward value, not effort, not intention, value. Value is the ability to solve problems in a way people are willing to reward. When you understand this, complaining loses its power. Instead of asking, why don't I have more? You start asking, what value am I currently offering and how can I increase it? Another law is the law of stewardship. Money avoids hands that waste it and seeks hands that manage it well. This is why small money often leaves people who don't respect it, while large money is trusted to those who prove faithful with little. Wealth is attracted to responsibility. If you can't manage 100, 1,000 will not stay. If you mishandle 1,000, 1,000,000 will pass you by. There is also the law of delayed gratification. Immediate pleasure competes with long-term prosperity. Most people don't fail financially because they don't earn enough. They fail because they consume too early. Intelligent investors understand that wealth is built by postponing comfort in order to purchase freedom later. What you delay today determines what you can enjoy tomorrow. Another unbreakable law is the law of compounding. Small decisions, when repeated consistently over time, create massive outcomes. This law works whether you respect it or ignore it. Bad habits compound into loss. Good habits compound into wealth. The problem is that compounding is quiet in the beginning. People quit because they don't see results fast enough, not realizing the system is already working. There's also the law of environment. Money behaves differently depending on where it is placed. The same dollar spent on liabilities disappears, but the same dollar invested in assets multiplies. Wealthy people don't have different money. They place money in different environments. Change the environment and the behavior of money changes automatically. One of the most misunderstood laws is the law of learning before earning. People want the reward without the preparation. But income expands at the level of your understanding. When your financial education grows, your confidence grows. When your confidence grows, your decision making improves. Better decisions produce better results. This is not magic, it's sequence. Perhaps the most liberating realization is this: once you learn the laws, you no longer have to rely on motivation. Motivation fades. Discipline doesn't. Laws work even when you're tired. Principles produce results even when you're emotional. That's why intelligent investors focus on systems, not feelings. When you align with financial laws, money stops being stressful. You stop chasing it. You stop fearing it. You start directing it. Instead of asking money where it's going, you tell it where to go. That shift from reaction to intention is the beginning of true wealth. The road to $1,000,000 does not begin with a windfall. It begins with respect for law. When you honor the principles that govern money, wealth stops being a dream and starts becoming a process. And processes, when followed faithfully, never fail to produce their promised result. Most people lose money not because they lack intelligence, but because they confuse excitement with wisdom. The marketplace is full of noise, urgency, and emotional pressure. Headlines scream, trends promise speed, stories of overnight success seduce the imagination. But intelligent investing is rarely loud. It is calm, calculated, and often boring to those who crave adrenaline. There is a critical difference between guessing and understanding. Guessing is driven by hope. Understanding is driven by knowledge. When people speculate, they rely on chance to rescue them. When people invest intelligently, They rely on principles to protect them. Hope is not a strategy. Understanding is. Speculation asks, what might happen? Intelligent investing asks, what is most likely to happen based on evidence? This shift alone changes everything. When you understand what you are doing, your emotions lose control over your decisions. Fear no longer rushes you into selling. Greed no longer pressures you into buying too late. Discipline replaces impulse, and patience replaces panic. Emotion is expensive in the marketplace. Fear causes people to sell assets at a discount. Greed causes people to buy them at a premium. The same asset that looked unattractive yesterday suddenly becomes irresistible today, not because its value changed, but because emotions did. Intelligent investors train themselves to respond to facts, not feelings. Understanding also produces margin of safety. This is the space between what something is worth and what you pay for it. When you buy based on hype, you eliminate margin. When you buy based on understanding, you create protection. The margin of safety is what allows you to remain calm when markets fluctuate because you didn't enter from desperation. Another difference between speculation and intelligent investing is time perspective. Speculators think in days and weeks. Intelligent investors think in years and decades. They understand that time is not the enemy of value, impatience is. The longer a solid asset is allowed to compound, the more powerful its impact becomes. People often say they don't have patience, but patience is not a personality trait. It is a decision. You don't need patience when you don't understand something. You need patience when you do. Understanding gives you the confidence to wait because you know what you own and why you own it. Intelligent investors also separate price from value. Price is what you pay. Value is what you receive. The market often confuses the two, but wisdom does not. Just because something is popular doesn't mean it is valuable. Just because something is temporarily unpopular doesn't mean it lacks worth. This is why intelligent investors read, study, and think deeply before committing resources. They don't rush because pressure is a sign that someone else needs you to act before you understand. Wisdom never demands speed. It invites clarity. Another hallmark of intelligent investing is self-control. The ability to do nothing is often more profitable than the ability to act. Many losses come not from wrong decisions, but from unnecessary decisions. Knowing when not to move is just as important as knowing when to move. Understanding also builds confidence without arrogance. Arrogance assumes you can't be wrong. Confidence assumes you can manage risk even if you are. Intelligent investors don't pretend the future is certain. They prepare for uncertainty by building resilient strategies. The tragedy is that many people want financial results without financial understanding. They copy moves instead of learning principles. But copying without comprehension is dangerous. What works in one situation can fail in another when the context changes. Principles travel. Shortcuts don't. When understanding leads your investing, wealth becomes predictable rather than accidental. You stop reacting to every headline. You stop being shaken by every downturn. You stop needing constant reassurance. You become steady while others are unstable. And in a world driven by emotional decision making, steadiness is a competitive advantage. Intelligent investing is not about being the fastest or the boldest. It is about being the clearest. When clarity governs your actions, money stops leaking through mistakes and starts multiplying through wisdom. Most people believe wealth is created by intensity, but intensity without discipline is chaos. The marketplace does not reward how strongly you feel, it rewards how consistently you act. Emotion rises and falls, but discipline remains steady. This is why emotional investors struggle while disciplined investors grow. Emotion makes you reactive. Discipline makes you intentional. Fear and greed are the two most expensive emotions in finance. Fear convinces you that safety is found in retreat, even when opportunity is present. Greed convinces you that opportunity will last forever, even when danger is near. Both distort reality. Discipline restores perspective. When fear dominates, people sell not because value has disappeared, but because comfort has. They exchange long-term gain for short-term relief. When greed dominates, people buy not because value has increased, but because excitement has. They exchange wisdom for applause. Discipline refuses both exchanges. Discipline begins with rules. Intelligent investors don't rely on feelings, they rely on frameworks. They decide in advance how they will act before pressure arrives. When rules are clear, emotions lose authority. You don't debate with fear, you consult your process. Another critical aspect of discipline is consistency. Wealth is rarely the result of one perfect decision. It is the result of many good decisions repeated over time. The problem is that consistency feels boring. There is no applause for showing up again. But repetition is what trains results to follow you. Many people sabotage themselves by constantly changing strategies. They mistake motion for progress. Discipline teaches you to stay long enough for results to compound. When you jump from one approach to another, you reset the process and delay the outcome. Discipline also teaches you to accept volatility without panic. Markets move, prices fluctuate, noise is constant. But movement is not the same as danger. Intelligent investors understand that volatility is a feature, not a flaw. Without movement, opportunity disappears. The disciplined investor does not ask, how does this feel today? They ask, has the underlying value changed? If the value remains, the plan remains. This ability to separate emotion from evaluation is what preserves wealth during uncertain seasons. Another overlooked dimension of discipline is delayed response. Not everything requires immediate action. Silence is sometimes the smartest move. Waiting allows information to surface and clarity to form. Many losses could have been avoided if people simply paused. Discipline also governs lifestyle. You cannot build long-term wealth with short-term thinking. Spending habits, saving habits, and investing habits must agree with your future vision. When your present behavior contradicts your future goals, frustration is inevitable. Intelligent investors practice restraint not because they lack desire, but because they value freedom more than indulgence. Every unnecessary expense is a vote against tomorrow's options. Discipline aligns daily choices with long-term outcomes. There is also discipline in learning continuously. Markets evolve. Tools change. Opportunities shift. The disciplined investor keeps sharpening understanding. Stagnation is expensive. Learning protects relevance and reduces error. Perhaps the greatest expression of discipline is trusting the process. Results often lag behind effort. This delay tests character. Many quit at the edge of breakthrough because they misinterpret silence as failure. Discipline keeps you moving even when evidence is delayed. Discipline does not eliminate emotion. It overrules it. You still feel fear, but you don't obey it. You still feel excitement, but you don't chase it. You acknowledge emotion, then return to principle. When discipline governs your decisions, wealth becomes less fragile. You are no longer dependent on perfect timing or constant wins. You are protected by process, and process, when followed faithfully, has a way of producing outcomes that emotions never could. This is why disciplined investors grow quietly while emotional investors make noise. One is building wealth, the other is chasing feelings, and over time, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Most people believe money is earned by working harder, but hard work by itself has never been the highest wealth strategy. Effort is important, but effort without leverage has a ceiling. You can only work so many hours, exert so much energy, and still remain limited. Wealth begins to accelerate when value is multiplied beyond personal effort. Money flows toward those who solve problems at scale. This is why income is not directly connected to how tired you are at the end of the day. If exhaustion created wealth, the poorest people would be the richest. The marketplace rewards usefulness, not fatigue. When you understand this, you stop asking how hard you should work and start asking how valuable you can become. Value is created when your knowledge, skill, or system produces results for others. The greater the problem you solve, the greater the reward attached to it. And when you solve the same problem for many people at once, income multiplies without multiplying effort. This is the difference between labor and leverage. Leverage allows one action to produce multiple outcomes. Teaching one lesson to 1,000 people creates more value than repeating the same lesson one 1,000 times. Building one system that serves continuously creates more impact than constantly starting from zero. Intelligent investors look for leverage because leverage honors time. Time is the one resource you cannot renew. When you exchange time for money directly, you eventually reach a limit. But when you build value that functions independently of your presence, time becomes your ally instead of your enemy. This is how income continues even when effort pauses. Another key realization is that skills scale more easily than labor. A skill can be refined, packaged, and distributed. Labor can only be repeated. When you invest in skills that solve problems, communication, leadership, strategy, analysis, you increase your earning capacity without increasing your workload. Value also increases when you specialize. Generalists are useful, but specialists are rewarded. When you become known for solving a specific problem exceptionally well, demand rises. Demand is what gives value negotiating power. The clearer your value, the easier it is for the market to reward it. Many people remain underpaid not because they lack ability, but because they lack clarity. The market does not reward hidden value. Intelligent investors learn to articulate what they offer and position it where it is needed. Visibility amplifies value. There is also value in ownership. When you own part of what produces value, you participate in its growth. Ownership converts contribution into multiplication. This is why intelligent investors prioritize equity over wages whenever possible. Wages end when work stops. Ownership continues as value increases. Another powerful form of value is problem prevention. People will pay more to avoid loss than to pursue gain. When you can reduce risk, save time, or eliminate stress, your value increases dramatically. This is why experience and wisdom are so valuable. They shorten learning curves and prevent costly mistakes. Value creation also requires integrity. Trust multiplies value. When people trust you, they follow your recommendations, invest in your ideas, and support your ventures. Without trust, even great ideas struggle. Integrity protects long-term value. Intelligent investors constantly ask, how can this create value beyond me? They think in systems, not tasks. They build processes that work repeatedly, not solutions that require constant supervision. This shift from doing to designing is what unlocks scalability. When your focus moves from effort to value, frustration decreases. You stop measuring progress by exhaustion and start measuring it by impact. Wealth becomes less about working longer and more about thinking better. This is the turning point for many people. The moment they realize that money does not reward motion, it rewards meaning. And when your work produces meaning at scale, the market responds accordingly. That is how income expands without burning you out, and how wealth begins to grow with sustainability and purpose. Most people think wealth is about how much money comes in, but real wealth is about what stays, what grows, and what produces. Income alone does not create freedom. Many people earn well and remain trapped because their money is consumed instead of deployed. Intelligent investors shift their focus from earning more to owning better. There is a crucial difference between assets and everything else. An asset puts money in your pocket. Everything else takes money out. This distinction sounds simple, but it is where many financial lives are quietly decided when most of your income is directed toward things that depreciate or require constant upkeep. Your future is being financed at your expense. Ownership is the bridge between effort and freedom. When you own assets, your money begins to work in ways your time never could. You can rest while assets produce. You can learn while assets grow. You can plan while assets compound. This is not luck, it is structure. Intelligent investors don't ask, what can I buy? They ask, what can I build or acquire that will continue to produce? This question changes behavior. It slows spending, it increases patience, it turns consumption into consideration. Assets also create options. When income is tied only to labor, choices are limited. You must keep working to maintain stability. But when assets produce consistently, choices expand. You can take risks, pivot careers, invest in growth, or support causes without panic. Assets buy time, and time is freedom. Another important aspect of ownership is cash flow. Appreciation is valuable, but cash flow sustains momentum. Intelligent investors appreciate growth, but they prioritize production. An asset that grows but never produces can feel impressive yet remain impractical. Production funds opportunity. Assets also protect against inflation. As the cost of living rises, assets adjust while fixed income struggles. Ownership allows your finances to move with the economy instead of against it. This is why those who own productive assets tend to feel less pressure during economic shifts. Many people avoid ownership because it feels complex or intimidating, but complexity is often just unfamiliarity. Understanding reduces fear. When you take time to learn how assets work, confidence replaces hesitation. Ownership is not reserved for experts, it is built by students who persist. Another overlooked truth is that assets reflect mindset. You do not accidentally accumulate productive ownership. It requires intention, planning, and restraint. Each asset represents a decision to delay consumption in favor of construction. Over time, those decisions compound into stability. Intelligent investors also understand diversification. Ownership is not about putting everything into one place. It is about spreading risk across productive environments. Diversification protects against surprise and smooths long-term growth. Wisdom avoids extremes. Assets also require management. Ownership does not mean neglect. What you own must be monitored, maintained, and evaluated. The goal is not to accumulate endlessly, but to steward wisely. Good management turns assets into allies instead of burdens. Another benefit of ownership is legacy. Assets can outlive effort. They can be transferred, improved, and multiplied across generations. Labor ends with life. Ownership extends influence beyond it. Intelligent investors think beyond their lifetime because they understand wealth as stewardship. The mistake many people make is waiting to earn more before investing. But intelligent investors invest to earn more. Even small ownership, when started early and managed well, grows powerful over time. The size of the beginning matters far less than the consistency of continuation. When you shift from consumption to ownership, stress begins to decrease. You stop feeling like you are running in place. Progress becomes visible. Momentum builds quietly but steadily. Wealth does not come from how much you touch, it comes from what you control. And when you control productive assets, you step onto a path where money becomes a tool instead of a trap. That is the moment financial effort transforms into financial freedom. Most people believe risk is something to be avoided, but risk is not the real enemy. Ignorance is. What feels risky is usually what is not understood. The same situation that terrifies one person gives confidence to another, not because the situation is different, but because the level of understanding is different. Intelligent investors don't run from risk, they run toward knowledge. Fear thrives in uncertainty. When information is limited, imagination fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios. This is why people avoid opportunities they don't understand while confidently repeating behaviors that quietly drain them. Familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar potential, but safety without growth eventually becomes stagnation. Understanding transforms fear into clarity. When you know how something works, you can anticipate outcomes, manage variables, and prepare responses. This does not eliminate uncertainty, but it reduces vulnerability. You may not control the future, but you can control how exposed you are to it. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that doing nothing is risk-free. In reality, inaction carries its own danger. Inflation erodes idle money, opportunity cost accumulates silently. Time passes whether you act or not. Ignorance disguised as caution often costs more than informed action. Intelligent investors study before they commit. They read, ask questions, analyze patterns, and seek counsel. This preparation is not hesitation, it is protection. Knowledge builds confidence, and confidence allows action without panic. Another critical insight is that risk is relative. What is risky to a beginner is routine to a professional. The difference is not courage, it is competence. Competence is built through learning and experience. This is why intelligent investors start small. Small exposure creates education without destruction. Each experience increases understanding and reduces future risk. Loss, when approached correctly, is also a teacher. Intelligent investors don't ignore mistakes, they extract lessons from them. Failure is only fatal when it is wasted. When lessons are learned, errors become tuition rather than tragedy. Understanding also helps investors distinguish between temporary volatility and permanent loss. Prices move, markets fluctuate, but not every drop is danger. Those who lack understanding react to movement as if it were disaster. Those who understand fundamentals recognize when value remains intact. Another dimension of knowledge is knowing your limits. Intelligent investors do not pretend to understand everything. They stay within circles of competence and avoid environments where they cannot evaluate risk. Humility protects wealth. Overconfidence destroys it. Understanding also includes knowing why you are investing. When your purpose is clear, decisions become simpler. If your goal is long-term growth, short-term noise loses influence. If your goal is stability, unnecessary volatility becomes obvious. Purpose filters opportunity. Education also creates patience. When you understand processes, you expect seasons. You don't panic during delay because you anticipated it. This patience allows compounding to work fully. Those who interrupt compounding because of fear never experience its power. Intelligent investors also recognize that understanding is ongoing. Markets change. Tools evolve. New information emerges. Stagnant knowledge becomes a liability. Continuous learning keeps risk manageable and relevance intact. Perhaps the most freeing realization is that confidence does not come from certainty, it comes from preparation. You don't need guarantees to move forward. You need frameworks, margins of safety, and the ability to adapt. When knowledge leads, fear loses its voice. Decisions become calmer, outcomes become more consistent. And even when things don't go as planned, recovery is quicker because understanding provides options. Wealth grows not in the absence of risk, but in the presence of wisdom. When you replace ignorance with insight, risk stops feeling like a threat and starts becoming a calculated step toward progress. Most people pursue money as an end, believing that once they have enough, everything else will fall into place. But money was never meant to be a destination. It is a tool. When money becomes the goal, it begins to control decisions, emotions, and identity. When money is treated as a servant, it expands freedom, impact, and legacy. Money amplifies whatever is already present. If discipline is present, money increases order. If chaos is present, money magnifies disorder. This is why some people gain wealth and lose peace, while others gain wealth and gain influence. The difference is not the amount of money, but the relationship with it. Intelligent investors understand that wealth is not about impressing people, it is about empowering purpose. Applause fades, possessions depreciate, but impact multiplies. When money is aligned with purpose, it stops being stressful and starts being strategic. One of the clearest signs that money has become a master is fear. Fear of losing it, fear of spending it, fear of not having enough. This fear drives short-term thinking and compromises long-term vision. But when money is a tool, fear gives way to clarity. You don't ask money for permission, you assign it direction. Purpose gives money boundaries. Without boundaries, money leaks into ego, excess, and comparison. With boundaries, money is allocated intentionally. Intelligent investors decide in advance what money is for. This removes confusion and regret. Another important principle is legacy. Money that ends with you is limited. Money that continues beyond you becomes powerful. Intelligent investors think generationally. They ask, what will this create long after I'm gone? This mindset shifts priorities from consumption to construction. Legacy is not only about inheritance, it is about influence. How you use money teaches others how to think about money. Stewardship becomes instruction. Wisdom becomes transferable. This is how values outlive individuals. Intelligent investors also understand the responsibility that comes with resources. More money means more options, but it also means more accountability. Every financial decision casts a vote for what you believe matters. Money reveals values faster than words. When money is viewed as a servant, generosity becomes natural rather than forced. Giving is no longer a loss, it is an investment in meaning. This does not diminish wealth, it clarifies it. Purpose-driven generosity strengthens perspective and keeps money from becoming an idol. Another overlooked truth is that wealth without direction creates confusion. Many people reach financial milestones and still feel empty because money answered questions it was never designed to solve. Fulfillment comes from alignment, not accumulation. Intelligent investors define success beyond numbers. They consider peace, time, flexibility, and contribution. When success is defined holistically, money serves life instead of dominating it. This balance protects mental and emotional well-being. Money also becomes most powerful when it is planned. Unplanned money drifts, planned money advances vision. Intelligent investors budget not out of restriction, but out of respect. Direction is not limitation, it is liberation. Perhaps the most important realization is that control determines freedom. When you control money, you choose. When money controls you, you react. Control comes from clarity, discipline, and purpose. The road to $1 million is impressive, but the road beyond it is more important. Wealth that lacks meaning eventually loses momentum. Wealth that serves purpose gains endurance.